Kiran had always been the smartest person in every room she entered. This was not pride. It was simply fact. Among the Velith, a species known across the galaxy for their perfect memory and analytical minds, she stood out like a bright star against a dark sky. By the age of 12 cycles, she had memorized the complete tactical histories of 47 species. By 15, she could predict fleet movements with 93% accuracy. Now, at 20 cycles old, she sat in the most prestigious military intelligence academy in the known galaxy. And she was bored. The Galactic Coalition Academy for Strategic Analysis occupied an entire moon. Its halls were filled with the brightest minds from hundreds of worlds. Here, young analysts learned to read the movements of fleets, to predict wars before they started, and to understand the military capabilities of every species in Coalition space. The Academy's database was legendary. It contained detailed scans of every warship ever built, every weapon system, every shield configuration, every engine signature, every species except one. Kiran had noticed the gap during her first week at the Academy. She had been studying human history, trying to understand the strange species that had burst onto the galactic stage. Just 3 centuries ago, humans were fascinating. They came from a death world, a planet so hostile that most species could not survive there for more than a few hours. They were persistent predators who had evolved to chase their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They were emotional, violent, unpredictable, and somehow they had built an empire that now stretched across 100 star systems. But when Kiran tried to access technical specifications for human warships, she found nothing. Not classified files, not restricted data, simply nothing. The database that contained detailed scans of Torvan dreadnoughts and Kethri assault carriers and Melian stealth cruisers had exactly 0 entries for human vessels. She had assumed it was an error at first, a glitch in the system. She reported it to the Academy's data administrators and waited for them to fix it. 3 days later, she received a response that said simply, "The database is functioning correctly. No error has been detected." This answer only made Kiran more curious. She began asking questions. Her fellow students knew nothing. Her basic instructors changed the subject whenever she brought it up. Finally, she requested a meeting with Professor Velthan, the oldest and most respected analyst at the Academy. He was a Velith like her, over 100 cycles old, and he had served on Coalition intelligence vessels for longer than most species, had been part of the Coalition. The professor received her in his private study. The room was filled with artifacts from dozens of worlds, trophies from a lifetime of service. Velthan himself looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. His silver eyes studied Kiran with an expression she could not read. "You want to know about human ships?" he said before she could speak. "Yes, Professor. I have noticed that our database contains no scans of human vessels, no technical specifications, nothing at all. I find this very strange." The old professor was quiet for a long moment. Then he rose from his chair and walked to his window. Outside, the Academy grounds stretched toward the horizon, filled with students from 100 worlds. "When I was young," Velthan said, "I was like you, curious, confident. I believed that any problem could be solved through analysis. Any mystery could be understood through data. I believed that knowledge was always good, always useful, always worth pursuing." He turned to face her. "I was wrong." Kiran felt a chill run through her body. She had never heard any Velith say such words. Knowledge was sacred to their people. Understanding was their highest goal. "The database is empty because we have chosen not to fill it," Velthan continued. "Every species in the Coalition has tried to skin human warships at some point. The Torvan tried it during the Border Wars. The Kethri attempted it when they first made contact with humanity. The Melians, the Goroth, the Syndicate of 7 Stars, all of them tried. What happened?" Kiran asked. The professor's expression grew dark. "Some things cannot be unseen, child. Some knowledge carries a price too heavy to pay. The analysts who performed those scans are no longer with us. Not because the humans killed them. The humans never even knew the scans were happening. No, those analysts simply could not live with what they learned." Kiran felt her analytical mind reject this explanation. It made no sense. A scan was just data. numbers, specifications. How could data harm anyone? I do not understand, she said. No, Velthon agreed. You do not, and I pray you never will. Forget about human ships. Kiran, focus on your studies. There are hundreds of other species to analyze. Leave the humans alone. But Kiran could not forget. The mystery consumed her thoughts. She spent her nights researching everything she could find about the failed scanning attempts. The records were incomplete, heavily redacted, but she found fragments, references to analysts who had gone mad, reports of entire intelligence teams that had to be permanently sedated, whispered stories about a Kethri vessel that had attempted a deep scan of a human battleship and had sent its entire crew into psychological collapse. None of it made sense, and Kiran hated things that did not make sense. 6 months later, she applied for a position aboard the Coalition observation vessel Infinite Perspective. This ship was assigned to monitor the border of human space. It was a posting that no one wanted, a dead-end assignment given to officers who had failed elsewhere, or who had volunteered for reasons others could not understand. Kiran volunteered. Her instructors tried to talk her out of it. Professor Velthon called her to his study and begged her to reconsider. But Kiran had made up her mind. She would solve this mystery. She would be the one to finally scan a human vessel and prove that there was nothing to fear. She would return to the academy as a hero, carrying data that would revolutionize their understanding of humanity. Her application was approved within a week. This surprised her. She had expected resistance, bureaucratic delays, perhaps even an outright rejection. Instead, she received acceptance almost immediately, along with a thick packet of documents. Most of the documents were standard: assignment details, travel arrangements, uniform specifications. But at the bottom of the packet, she found two items that made her pause. The first was a liability waiver. It was 17 pages long and written in legal language so dense that even her perfect memory struggled to parse it. The document essentially stated that the Coalition accepted no responsibility for any physical, psychological, or spiritual damage that might occur during her assignment. She had to sign it in 3 places and press her genetic signature to a scanner. That would bind the agreement to her very DNA. The second item was a short note, handwritten on plain paper. It said, "We recommend that you update your species' death rights before departure. The chaplain's office can assist with arrangements." Kiran stared at the note for a long time. Then she laughed. This was clearly an attempt to frighten her, to make her back out at the last moment. Well, it would not work. She was Velith. She was not afraid of data. She was not afraid of knowledge. She was not afraid of anything. She signed the waiver and submitted her paperwork that same day. 3 weeks later, she stood in the departure terminal, waiting for the shuttle that would take her to the Infinite Perspective. Her bag contained everything she would need for a 2-year assignment. Her mind contained every piece of information the Academy had about human space, human culture, human military history. She was ready. Professor Velthon came to see her off. He looked older than she had ever seen him. His silver eyes filled with something that might have been sorrow or might have been fear. "You are making a mistake," he said quietly. "I am pursuing knowledge," Kiran replied. "That is never a mistake." The old professor shook his head. "When I was young, I served on a vessel much like the one you are joining. I was curious, just like you. I wanted to understand humans. I thought I could handle whatever I found." He reached out and touched her shoulder, a gesture of intimacy rare among their people. "I performed a scan once, just once. A human frigate, a small patrol vessel, nothing special. The scan lasted less than 4 seconds before I terminated it." "What did you see?" Kiran asked. Velthon's hand trembled against her shoulder. "I saw what humans carry inside their ships. Not weapons, not technology. Something else. Something that no amount of analysis can prepare you for." He pulled his hand back and straightened his robes. "I have spent the last 150 cycles trying to forget those 4 seconds. I have not succeeded." The shuttle arrived. Kiran picked up her bag. "Goodbye, Professor," she said. "When I return, I will have the data that has eluded our people for centuries. You will see that there was nothing to fear." Velthon said nothing. He simply stood and watched as she walked through the boarding gate and disappeared into the shuttle. His silver eyes remained fixed on the empty doorway long after she was gone. On the shuttle, Kiran found her seat and began reviewing her assignment materials. The Infinite Perspective was a Torvan-designed observation vessel, modified for long-term deployment. Its crew of 47 came from 12 different species. Its mission was simple: watch human space, record ship movements, and never, under any circumstance. The Infinite Perspective was not what Kiran had expected. She had imagined a gleaming vessel filled with eager analysts, all working together to unlock the secrets of human space. Instead, she found a tired ship crewed by tired people who seemed to have given up on everything except survival. The vessel hung in the darkness at the edge of human-controlled territory, far enough away to avoid attention, but close enough to monitor ship traffic. Its hull was scarred and patched in dozens of places. Its corridors were dim, lit by energy-saving lights that gave everything a sickly yellow glow. The air smelled stale, recycled too many times through filters that needed replacement. Commander Grex met her at the airlock. He was a Torvan, a species known for their massive size and warrior culture. But Grex did not look like a warrior. He looked like a man who had seen too much and slept too little. His gray skin hung loose on his frame, and his yellow eyes were bloodshot and weary. "Another volunteer," he said, his voice flat. "Velith young, confident. Let me guess, you want to scan a human ship." Kiran was surprised by his directness. "I want to understand why we have not scanned human ships. I want to fill the gap in our database." Grex laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "They always say that. The curious ones, the brave ones, the ones who think they are smarter than everyone who came before them." He turned and walked down the corridor, gesturing for her to follow. "Come, I will show you to your quarters. Try not to die in the first week." The tour of the ship took less than an hour. The Infinite Perspective had been built for a crew of 100, but operated with less than 50. Entire sections were sealed off, either damaged beyond repair or simply not needed. The crew she met along the way shared their commander's exhausted demeanor. They nodded at her without interest and went back to their duties without conversation. Her quarters were small but private. A bed, a desk, a terminal, a tiny bathroom. The previous occupant had left scratches on the wall near the bed, long parallel marks that looked disturbingly like claw marks. Kiran chose not to ask about them. Over the next few days, she learned the rhythms of the ship. The crew worked in shifts, monitoring the passive sensors that tracked human vessels as they moved through nearby space. They recorded everything but analyzed nothing. The data was transmitted back to Coalition headquarters where, Kiran assumed, it was filed away and forgotten. The rules of the ship were simple: passive observation only. No active scans, no communication with human vessels, no attempts to get closer than the established safe distance. Anyone who violated these rules would be confined to quarters and shipped back to Coalition space. On the next available transport, Kiran found these rules frustrating. She had come here to learn, to discover, to solve the mystery that had consumed her for months. Instead, she was expected to sit and watch and do nothing. It was torture for someone with her analytical mind. She tried talking to the other crew members about their experiences. Most refused to discuss the subject. A few shared fragments of stories, always in whispers, always with fearful glances over their shoulders. One engineer, a Melian named Seth, told her about an analyst who had attempted a scan 3 years ago. The analyst had lasted less than 2 seconds before collapsing. He had spent 6 months in the medical bay, screaming whenever he was awake. Eventually, they had to put him in permanent sedation. He was still alive, technically, but his mind was gone. Kiran listened to these stories with growing skepticism. They sounded like myths, like scary tales designed to frighten children. Active scans were just data collection. How could data cause such damage? It made no scientific sense. On her 8th day aboard the Infinite Perspective, she decided to find out for herself. The opportunity came during the night shift. The skeleton crew on duty was minimal, and Kiran had learned which sections of the ship were unwatched during those hours. The sensor station in auxiliary control was unmanned. Its systems were fully functional. All she needed was a target. She found one at 03 for 7 ship time. A human patrol vessel emerged from hyperspace, approximately 40,000 kilometers away. It was a small ship, a frigate class, exactly the kind of target she needed. Small crew, limited history. If she was going to test the waters, this was the safest option. Kieran's fingers moved across the console with practiced efficiency. She had studied the ship's systems during her first week, memorizing every command sequence, every access code. The passive sensors were already tracking the human vessel. Activating the deep skin array required only 3 additional commands. She hesitated for just a moment. Professor Velthon's words echoed in her memory. The stories she had heard, the warnings she had received. But her curiosity was stronger than her caution. She had not traveled all this way to sit and watch. She had come here for answers. She entered the final command. The deep skin array powered up with a soft hum. Kieran watched the data begin to flow across her screen. Hull composition, engine signatures, power output, shield frequencies, standard technical information. Exactly what she had expected. She allowed herself a small smile of triumph. All that fear, all those warnings, and for what? This was just data, just numbers, just information. And then the skin went deeper. At 3.2 seconds, the data stream changed. Technical specifications gave way to something else, something that should not have been possible. Kieran felt the information flooding into her mind, bypassing her eyes entirely, pouring directly into her consciousness through channels she did not know existed. She saw a woman, standing on a bridge, watching stars explode around her. She felt the woman's fear, her determination, her absolute refusal to surrender even as her ship burned around her. She felt the woman's love for her crew, for her family back on Earth, for the species she had sworn to protect. At 3.4 seconds, the images multiplied. A young man crawling through a shattered corridor, dragging a wounded friend behind him. An engineer working frantically to repair a reactor before it went critical. A captain ordering her crew to abandon ship while she stayed behind to cover their escape. A father looking at a picture of his children and whispering a promise to come home. At 3.6 seconds, Kieran understood. The human ship was not just a vessel, it was a container. A container filled with every emotion, every memory, every moment of courage and terror, and love and loss that had ever occurred within its hull. Every human who had served aboard that frigate had left something behind. A trace, an imprint, a piece of their soul burned into the very metal of the ship. At 3.7 seconds, Kieran terminated the scan. She did not remember falling. She did not remember screaming. She only remembered the overwhelming weight of human experience crushing her mind. The flood of emotions that her Velith brain was never designed to process. Joy and grief and rage and tenderness, all mixed together into a storm that threatened to tear her consciousness apart. When she woke, she was in the medical bay. The lights were too bright. Her head felt like it was splitting open. Commander Grex stood beside her bed, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. 3.7 seconds, he said quietly. That is actually impressive. Most people do not last past 2. Kieran tried to speak, but could only manage a weak groan. You scanned a frigate, Grex continued. A small patrol vessel, crew of maybe 30, in service for perhaps 15 years. A baby, by human standards. Nothing special, nothing significant. Just a little ship doing routine patrols. He leaned closer, and Kieran saw something in his yellow eyes that might have been pity. That was a frigate. He said, a small one. Now you understand why we do not skin the battleships. Kieran lay there in silence, processing his words. A frigate, a small ship, and it had almost destroyed her mind with the weight of human memory it carried. She tried to imagine what a battleship would contain. A vessel with centuries of service. A crew of thousands, wars and battles and deaths beyond counting. The accumulated emotional weight of generations of humans who had lived and fought and died within its hull. She began to weep. The tears came without warning, flowing down her face in streams she could not control. She wept for the woman on the bridge. She wept for the young man in the corridor. She wept for the captain who stayed behind and the father who promised to come home. She wept for people she had never met, humans she had never known, souls that had touched her mind for less than 4 seconds and left marks that would never fade. Grex watched her cry without judgment. He had seen this before. Every curious analyst, every confident scientist, every brilliant mind that thought they could handle the truth about human ships. They all ended up here, weeping in the medical bay, their certainties shattered by contact with something they could not explain. "Rest now," he said finally. "The doctor will keep you sedated for a few days. Your mind needs time to process what you experienced. Most of it will fade. Most of it." He paused at the door. "But you will never be the same. None of us are. That is the price of curiosity." He left, and Kieran was alone with her borrowed memories. She closed her eyes and saw human faces. She felt human emotions. She understood, finally, why the database was empty, why no one had filled it, why no one ever would. Some knowledge could not be reduced to data. Some truths could not be contained in files and specifications. Human ships were not just machines. They were monuments to everything humanity was willing to. Kieran spent 11 days in the medical bay. For the first 3, she was kept under heavy sedation, her mind too fragile to face consciousness. When they finally reduced the medication, she wished they had not. The human memories were waiting for her, vivid and overwhelming, playing on an endless loop behind her eyes. Dr. Yefmer was a Goroth, a species known for their calm demeanor and skilled healers. She had served aboard the Infinite Perspective for 12 years and had treated dozens of patients. Just like Kieran, she explained everything with gentle patience, as if speaking to a child. "What you experienced is called psychic bleed," the doctor said, checking Kieran as vital signs. "Human vessels are saturated with emotional imprint. Every crew member who serves aboard a human ship leaves something behind, a trace of their consciousness, their memories, their feelings. Humans do not do this intentionally. They do not even know it happens. It is simply part of who they are." Kieran tried to focus on the doctor's words, but the images kept intruding. A young woman laughing in the mess hall, an old man staring at a letter from home, a soldier holding a dying friend and promising that their death would mean something. Why? Kieran managed to ask, "Why does this happen?" Dr. Yefmer sighed. "We do not fully understand. The best theory we have is that humans form emotional bonds that transcend the physical. They bond with each other, with their families, with their cousins, and somehow, they also bond with their ships. The vessels become extensions of themselves, containers for their collective experience. When you scan a human ship, you are not just reading data. You are touching every soul that ever served aboard that vessel. How do I make it stop?" Kieran whispered. The doctor's expression was kind but honest. "You do not. The memories will fade over time. They will become less vivid, less intrusive. But they will never disappear completely. You will carry pieces of those humans inside you for the rest of your life. That is the price of what you did." Over the following days, Kieran slowly learned to function again. The memories became more manageable, settling into the background of her consciousness like old scars that ached in bad weather. She could think again, analyze again, even laugh occasionally. But she was not the same person who had arrived on the Infinite Perspective 2 weeks ago. That confident, curious analyst was gone, replaced by someone who understood things she had never wanted to know. She learned more about the history of human ship scanning from the crew. Commander Grex told her about the Kethri incident, the first known attempt by a coalition species to perform a deep scan on a human vessel. The Kethri were brilliant scientists, masters of technology, absolutely certain that their advanced minds could handle anything. They had targeted a human cruiser and scanned it for nearly 30 seconds. Before their equipment overloaded, the scanning team was found catatonic, Grex said. 17 analysts, some of the best in Kethri space, reduced to empty shells. Their bodies still breathed, but their minds were gone, overwhelmed by the weight of human experience. The Kethri government demanded compensation from humanity, claiming that the humans had attacked their people. The humans were genuinely confused. They had no idea their ships could do that to alien minds. Suf the engineer told her about the Torvan attempt during the border wars. The Torvan were warriors, hardened by generations of conflict. They believed that their mental fortitude could withstand anything. They were wrong. An entire intelligence division, over 100 officers, had to be euthanized after attempting to scan a human battleship. The Torvans still spoke of it in whispers. It was their greatest defeat, and no Torvan weapon had been fired. The worst part, Sith said quietly, is that the humans tried to warn us. After the Kethri incident, they issued advisories to every species in the coalition. They explained what their ships contained. They begged us not to attempt scans. But nobody believed them. We thought it was a trick, a way to hide their military secrets. We thought we were smarter than they were. Kiran began to understand something profound. The humans were not hiding their military capabilities. They could not hide them because their capabilities were not technological. Human ships were powerful not because of their weapons or shields or engines. They were powerful because of what they contained, the accumulated will, courage, love, and determination of every human who had ever served aboard them. On her 9th day in the medical bay, she asked Dr. Yethmer a question that had been troubling her. Why do I feel their emotions? The Velith are not a psychic species. We do not have the capacity for this kind of connection. The doctor was quiet for a moment. That is something we have debated for many years. The current theory is that human emotional imprint is so powerful that it can force connections where none should exist. It does not matter if you are psychic or not. The human experience is so intense, so deeply felt, that it overwrites normal mental barriers. Their emotions become your emotions, whether you want them or not. That is terrifying, Kiran said. Yes, the doctor agreed. Now you understand why nobody scans human ships anymore. It is not about military secrets. It is about survival. Kiran was released from the medical bay on the 11th day. She returned to her quarters and sat on her bed, staring at the scratches on the wall that she now understood. The previous occupant had not been attacked. They had been trying to claw their way out of their own mind, desperate to escape the human memories that had invaded their consciousness. She touched the marks with her fingertips and felt a strange kinship with whoever had made them. Over the next few weeks, Kiran tried to return to her duties. She sat at observation stations and watched human ships move through space. She recorded data and filed reports. But everything felt different now. When she saw a human vessel, she no longer saw a target for analysis. She saw a container filled with souls. She saw love letters and last words and promises kept and broken. She saw everything humanity was willing to sacrifice for those they protected. She began to dream about the human woman she had seen on the bridge. In her dreams, the woman would turn and look at her with calm, steady eyes. She never spoke, but Kiran understood her message anyway. We are not your enemies. We are not your weapons. We are just people who love too deeply and remember too much. One morning, approximately 6 weeks after her scan, Kiran woke to the sound of alarms. She rushed to the bridge to find the crew in a state of controlled panic. Commander Grex stood at the center of the chaos, issuing orders in a voice that was impressively calm given the circumstances. What is happening? Kiran asked Sith, who was working frantically at an engineering station. Soth's face was pale. A human ship has entered the sector. It is heading directly toward us. That is not unusual. Human ships pass through all the time. Not this one. Sith turned his display so Kiran could see. Look at the registry. Kiran looked and felt her blood run cold. The ship was called the Thermopylae. It was a battleship, one of the oldest in the human fleet. Over 800 years of continuous service. Countless battles, thousands of crew members across dozens of generations. The accumulated weight of 8 centuries of human experience, compressed into a single vessel. Why is it coming here? Kiran asked, her voice barely a whisper. We do not know, Commander Grex answered, walking over to join them. But it changed course 3 hours ago. It is heading directly for us. No deviation, no communication, just coming, steady and sure. Kiran felt the human memories stirring inside her. The woman on the bridge, the soldiers in the corridors, the captain who stayed behind. They were agitated, excited, as if they recognized something she could not. This is because of me, she said. Because of my scan. Grex looked at her sharply. What makes you say that? I do not know. I just feel it. They know what I did. They are coming because of me. The commander studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You may be right. There have been reports that humans can somehow sense when their ships are scanned. They cannot explain how, but they always seem to know. What will they do to us? Kieran asked. Grex turned back to the main display, where the thermopyle continued its steady approach. I do not know. No human ship has ever approached an observation vessel before. We are in unknown territory. He straightened his shoulders and set his jaw. All we can do is wait, he said, and pray that whatever the humans want, they are willing to talk before they act. On the screen, the thermopyle grew larger with each passing moment. 800 years of human memory and determination coming straight toward them. Kieran watched it approach and felt the human fragments inside her resonate like strings on an instrument. Something was about to change. She could feel it in her borrowed human soul. The thermopyle stopped exactly 10 kilometers from the infinite perspective. At that distance, the human battleship filled the observation windows like a mountain hanging in space. It was massive, far larger than any ship Kieran had ever seen in person. Its hull was scarred and weathered, covered in patches and repairs that told the story of centuries of service. Despite its age, the ship radiated power. Every sensor on the Coalition vessel was screaming warnings about the weapons pointed in their direction. But no weapons had been fired. No aggressive moves had been made. The thermopyle simply sat there waiting. Commander Grex had ordered the crew to remain at their stations, but to make no hostile actions. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. Everyone was waiting for something to happen, for the humans to attack, to communicate, to do anything except sit there in silence. The waiting lasted for nearly 4 hours. Then a transmission came through. Coalition Vessel Infinite Perspective. This is the HFS Thermopyle. We request permission to send a shuttle. We would like to speak with the analyst who initiated contact with the human patrol vessel 6 weeks ago. We mean no harm. Please respond. Grex looked at Kieran. The entire bridge crew looked at Kieran. She felt their eyes on her, felt their fear, felt the weight of a decision that was not really hers to make. What do they mean by contact? Grex asked quietly. All you did was skin one of their ships. Kieran thought about the woman on the bridge, the soldiers in the corridors, the emotions that had flooded into her mind during those 3.7 seconds. I think that is contact to them. I touched their people, their memories. I made a connection, and now they want to talk to you about it. It seems so. Grex was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the communications officer. Tell them we accept. 1 shuttle, no weapons, and they leave their ship's weapons powered down. The reply came quickly. The humans agreed to all conditions. 20 minutes later, Kieran stood in the shuttle bay, watching a small human vessel approach through the atmospheric shield. It was a simple craft, functional rather than elegant, carrying perhaps 6 passengers at most. It landed gently on the deck, and Kieran felt her heart racing as the hatch began to open. She did not know what she had expected. Warriors, perhaps, angry soldiers demanding answers for her intrusion into their ship's memories. What she got was a single elderly woman in a simple blue uniform, walking down the shuttle ramp with the careful grace of someone who had learned to move in low gravity long before Kieran was born. The woman's hair was white and cut short. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She looked at Kieran with an expression that contained no anger, no hostility, only a deep and genuine curiosity. You must be the analyst, the woman said. Her voice was warm, with the slight roughness of age. I am Captain Mayway. I have commanded the Thermopyle for the last 43 years. My family has served aboard this ship for 12 generations. Kieran managed to find her voice. I am Kieran, I am. I was an intelligence analyst. Before you touched our ship, it was not a question. Yes, I am sorry. I know now that it was wrong. I did not understand what I was doing. Captain Way smiled gently. Nobody ever does. That is why we keep trying to warn you. And that is why you keep ignoring the warnings. Curiosity is a powerful thing, especially in the brilliant young minds that species like yours seem to produce in abundance. She gestured toward the shuttle bay exit. Walk with me. I would like to talk with you, and I would like to show you something, if you are willing. Kieran hesitated. The human memories inside her were stirring again, stronger now than they had been since the medical bay. She could feel the presence of the thermopylae, a vast weight of accumulated experience pressing against her consciousness even from this distance. "Your ship," she said. "I can feel it, even from here." "How is that possible?" Captain Wei's expression grew thoughtful. "You carry pieces of our people inside you now. The crew of the frigate you scanned. Their memories, their emotions, they left traces in your mind. Those traces recognize the thermopylae. They know what she contains." "What does she contain?" "Everything." The captain began walking toward the exit, and Kiran found herself following. 800 years of service, countless battles, thousands of crew members who lived and died within her hull. The thermopylae is not just a ship. She is a memorial, a promise, a record of everything humanity has sacrificed to protect what we love. They walked through the corridors of the infinite perspective, past crew members who pressed themselves against the walls to let them pass. Captain Wei seemed unbothered by the fearful looks she received. She walked like someone who was used to being feared and had long since stopped caring. They reached an airlock that connected to a boarding tube. Captain Wei paused before it. "This is where I must ask you something," she said. "The frigate you scanned was a small ship, young, relatively unburdened. What you experienced was difficult, but survivable. The thermopylae is different. If you step aboard her, you will experience something far more intense. It may overwhelm you. It may change you in ways you cannot predict. I want you to understand this before you make your choice." "Why do you want me to come aboard?" Kiran asked. "Because you survived contact with human memory. Most aliens do not. Most aliens are destroyed by even brief exposure. But you did not just survive. You integrated. You carry our people inside you now, and you are still functional, still yourself. That makes you rare. That makes you valuable. Valuable for what?" Captain Wei looked at her with those sharp, ancient eyes. "We have been trying to build bridges to other species for centuries. We have tried to explain what we are, what our ships contain, why scanning them is dangerous. But nobody understands. Nobody can understand because they cannot feel what we feel. They cannot experience what our ships experience." She reached out and touched Kiran's shoulder, a gesture that echoed what Professor Velthon had done all those months ago. "You can," the captain said. "You already have. And if you are willing, you can become something new, a bridge between our peoples, someone who can explain what we are in a way that others can understand." Kiran felt tears forming in her eyes. The human memories inside her were responding to the captain's words, resonating with emotions that were not quite hers, but not quite foreign anymore either. "And if I refuse, then we return you to your ship, and we leave, and nothing changes. The galaxy continues to misunderstand us. Other curious analysts continue to destroy themselves trying to scan our ships, and the gap between our peoples remains as wide as ever." Kiran thought about Professor Velthon, spending 150 years trying to forget for seconds of human memory. She thought about the Kethri analysts reduced to empty shells. She thought about the Torvan officers who had to be euthanized. All that suffering, all that loss, because nobody could understand what human ships truly were. She thought about the woman on the bridge, watching stars explode around her and refusing to surrender. She thought about the father looking at pictures of his children. She thought about every human who had ever loved something enough to die for it. "I will come," she said. Captain Wei smiled. "I hoped you would say that." The airlock opened, and they stepped into the boarding tube. As they walked toward the thermopylae, Kiran felt the pressure building. The ship's presence grew stronger with every step, pressing against her mind, demanding to be acknowledged. When they reached the thermopylae's airlock, Kiran had to stop. The weight of 8 centuries was crushing her, filling her consciousness with fragments of countless lives. She gasped, struggling to breathe, struggling to think. Captain Wei took her hand. "Focus on me, on my voice. The ship can feel you too, and she is curious. She has never encountered an alien who could sense her before. She does not know how to be gentle. Can you? Can you ask her to be gentle?" The captain laughed softly. "She is not that kind of ship. But I can help you. Let me be your anchor. Focus on my presence, and the rest will become manageable." Kiran gripped the captain's hand like a drowning person gripping a rope. She fixed her mind on the warmth of human contact, on the steady pulse of Wei's heartbeat, on the calm certainty in the old woman's eyes. The airlock opened. Kieran stepped aboard the thermopyle, and the universe changed forever. She felt them all, 800 years of human souls, flooding into her consciousness like an ocean pouring through a crack in a dam. Soldiers and scientists, engineers and officers, children born aboard the ship and old people who had died in their bunks. She felt their hopes and fears, their loves and losses, their triumphs and defeats. She felt the ship itself, ancient and proud, scarred but unbroken, carrying the weight of generations without complaint. The thermopyle was alive, not in a biological sense, but in a way that transcended biology. She was the sum of everyone who had ever loved her, everyone who had ever served her, everyone who had ever believed in what she represented. Kieran fell to her knees, overwhelmed but not destroyed. Captain Wei knelt beside her, still holding her hand, still serving as an anchor in the storm. Captain Wei led Kieran through the corridors of the thermopyle, and with each step, the ship revealed more of itself. The ancient vessel was a maze of passages and chambers, some gleaming with new equipment and others showing their age through worn metal and faded paint. Crew members passed them occasionally, nodding respectfully to their captain and studying Kieran with curious but not unfriendly eyes. The human memories inside Kieran were singing now, harmonizing with the vast consciousness of the ship. She could feel the presence of specific individuals in certain locations, ghostly impressions left by moments of particular intensity. Here, in this corridor, a young officer had proposed to her partner. There, in that alcove, a father had received news that his child had been born safely on Earth. At that junction, a crew had gathered to mourn a fallen friend. The ship remembered everything, and now Kieran remembered too. "Where are we going?" she managed to ask. "To the heart of the ship," Captain Wei replied. "The memorial chamber. Every human warship has one. It is the most sacred space aboard any vessel." They descended deeper into the thermopyle, past engineering sections and medical bays, past crew quarters and cargo holds. The deeper they went, the more intense the ship's presence became. Kieran felt as though she was swimming through an ocean of human experience, carried along by currents she could barely comprehend. Finally, they reached a large door marked with symbols that Kieran did not recognize but somehow understood. A flame, a star, a heart wrapped in iron. "This is the memorial hall," Captain Wei said. "The names of everyone who ever served aboard this ship are recorded here. Every birth, every death, every moment of courage and sacrifice. 800 years of humanity, preserved forever." The door opened, and Kieran stepped inside. The chamber was enormous, far larger than she had expected. Its walls stretched upward into darkness, covered from floor to ceiling with names. Millions of names, etched in metal, glowing softly in the dim light. Small lights floated throughout the space, each one representing a soul that had once called this ship home. Kieran's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the weight of what she was witnessing. The human fragments inside her flared with recognition, with longing, with an ache that transcended species or biology. These were their people, their family, their ship. Captain Wei sat down beside her on the cold metal floor. "The first name on these walls belongs to Captain Sarah Chen," she said quietly. "She commanded the thermopyle during her maiden voyage, 817 years ago. The last names were added just 3 weeks ago, when we lost 2 crew members to a reactor accident." She pointed to a section of wall near the entrance. "My grandmother's name is there, and my grandfather's, and my parents', and my children's." Her voice caught slightly. "My husband's name was added 40 years ago. He was the first to go. I have served alone since then. How do you bear it?" Kieran whispered. "How do you carry all this grief?" "We do not see it as grief," Captain Wei said. "We see it as purpose. Every name on these walls represents someone who gave their life meaning by serving aboard this ship. They protected their families, their world, their species. They lived with courage and died with honor. We do not mourn them. We celebrate them. We carry them with us into every battle, every voyage, every moment of every day." She turned to look at Kieran directly. "That is what you felt when you skinned our frigate. Not just memories, not just emotions. You felt the weight of human purpose, the determination that drives us to keep fighting, keep protecting, keep loving even when it hurts." Our ships are not weapons. They are promises. Promises that we will never abandon those who need us. Promises that we will always stand between the darkness and those we love. Kiran sat in silence, letting the captain's words settle into her consciousness alongside the human memory she carried. She was beginning to understand something that had eluded her analytical mind for months. The galaxy had been trying to study humanity like a scientific problem, like a puzzle to be solved through data and analysis. But humanity could not be reduced to data. They could not be understood through scans and specifications. They could only be understood through experience, through connection, through opening yourself to the overwhelming power of human emotion. The galaxy fears you, Kiran said finally. They fear your ships, your weapons, your military power. But they fear the wrong things, do they not? Captain Wei smiled. Yes, our weapons are dangerous, certainly. But they are just tools. The real power of humanity lies in what you have experienced. Our capacity for love, our refusal to surrender, our determination to protect what matters to us at any cost. That is what the galaxy should truly fear. And that is what the galaxy should truly embrace, if they could only understand it. That is why you brought me here. You want me to help them understand. Yes, you have a gift, Kiran. You survived contact with human memory. You integrated it instead of being destroyed by it. You can feel what we feel, at least to some degree. If you are willing, you can become a bridge between our peoples. You can explain to the galaxy what our ships truly contain. You can help them understand why scanning human battleships is not just dangerous, but pointless. Why pointless? Because our strength does not come from our technology. It comes from our souls. And souls cannot be copied, cannot be replicated, cannot be stolen through deep scans and intelligence reports. Even if you had complete technical specifications for every human warship in the fleet, it would not help you defeat us, because the specifications do not include the thing that truly makes our ships powerful. Captain Wei stood and helped Kiran to her feet. Come, I want to show you one more thing before you decide. She led Kiran to the far end of the memorial chamber, where a single name stood apart from the others. It was larger, surrounded by a frame of golden light, and beneath it was a simple inscription. The name read, "To all who will come after." This is the promise, Captain Wei said. The promise that every human who serves aboard this ship makes to everyone who will serve after them. We promise to keep the ship safe, to maintain her honor, to add our strength to the strength of all who came before. When we die, our names join the walls, and our souls join the ship, and we become part of something that will outlive us all. Kiran reached out and touched the glowing frame. She felt a shock of connection, a sudden rush of purpose that was not quite human, but not quite alien anymore either. She was becoming something new, something that stood between species, carrying pieces of both. If I do this, she said slowly, if I become this bridge you speak of, I can never go back to what I was. I will never be purely Velith again. No, Captain Wei agreed. You will not. You will be something new, something the galaxy has never seen before. It will not be easy. Many will not understand. Some will fear you. Some will hate you. But you will carry within you the truth about humanity, and that truth will change everything. In time, Kiran stood in the memorial chamber of the Thermopylae, surrounded by 8 centuries of human memory, and made her choice. I will do it, she said. I will be your bridge. Captain Wei smiled, and for a moment, Kiran saw tears in the old woman's eyes. Thank you, she said. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for caring enough to try. 5 years later, Kiran stood in the lecture hall of the Galactic Coalition Academy for Strategic Analysis, the same academy where she had once studied, the same hall where she had first become curious about human ships. But everything else had changed. She was famous now, or perhaps infamous, depending on who you asked. The Velith who carried human souls, the analyst who had survived the impossible, the bridge between species. She had written papers and given speeches and met with leaders from 100 worlds. She had explained over and over again what human ships truly contained. Not everyone believed her. Not everyone wanted to understand. But slowly, gradually, the galaxy was beginning to change. Fewer analysts attempted to scan human vessels. More species began to approach humanity with respect rather than fear. The gap between civilizations was beginning to close. A young Kethri student raised her hand. Professor Kiran, I have a question. If human ships are so powerful because of emotional imprint, why do the humans not conquer the galaxy? Why do they not use that power to dominate everyone else? Kiran smiled. It was a question she had been asked many times, and her answer never changed. Because that is not what humanity is about, she said. They do not fight to conquer. They fight to protect. Their ships are powerful because they are filled with love, not hate, with determination to save, not destroy. Humanity could have conquered the galaxy long ago if they had wanted to, but they do not want to. They want to stand guard. They want to keep the darkness at bay. They want to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She paused, touching her temple where the human memories still lived after all these years. The woman on the bridge, the father with his children's picture, the captain who stayed behind. That is why even the smartest aliens refuse to scan human battleships, she said. Not because they fear what they will find, but because they know, deep down, that if they truly understood humanity, they would have to admit something terrifying. What is that? The student asked. Kiran looked out at her students, at